I'm Kieran Ely, and this is my reworked presentation on the Pioneers piece. I have decided to do my reworked presentation on a pioneer in medicine named Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur was born on December 27th in 1822 in a region of France called Dole. He sadly died on September the 28th, 1895 in St. Cloud. He was a renowned French chemist who is widely considered the founding father of microbiology. He grew up relatively poor. He was the child of 4 children, and his father was a tanner, and he wasn't particularly well off. His contributions to science and medicine were nearly all done without any predecessor. So that basically means all the work he did, it wasn't based on other research. He did his research purely from scratch. He is best known for his work on the discovery of vaccinations and immunology, which has a link now to the current climate, with COVID and whatnot. And the idea of germ theory, which has discovered that microorganisms cause fermentation and disease rather than spontaneous generation, which is something we'll get onto. He also originated the process of pasteurization, which is actually named after him, which saved industries in France as well as preserving many lives. And when I say many lives, millions. So when taking a deeper look into Louis Pasteur's early life, we can observe that he was not particularly academic in his early educational years and was said to be more interested in artwork. He originally studied philosophy in a place called Benzacon, earning a Bachelor of Letters degree in 1840. He continued a degree, a science course, but however he failed his first examination, which can go to show that you don't always start off as a pioneer. You don't always start off in the most conventional way. He passed the Baccalaureate Scientifique, the general science course in Dijon, earning himself a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics. However, he only actually passed with a fairly mediocre average degree level. He did, however, find academic success later in his life. He took tests for the École Normale Supérieure and passed with high marks and earned his licence degree in 1845. He spent the majority of his career in the University of Strasbourg, where he met his wife Marie Laurent. Together they had 5 children, but 3 of which sadly died from typhoid, which a lot of people attribute to his why he had such a passion for developing vaccinations and stuff which can fight diseases. He also did work on disproving a theory which is longer held in history, dating back to Hippocrates and Greek medicine, disproving the idea of spontaneous generation, which prior to Pasteur's work, many scientists believe this was the cause of harmful microorganisms, which essentially was the idea that non-living particles in the air caused disease rather than physical stuff. Pasteur set out to disprove this theory and used a method involving a swan-necked flask. He began by adding a rich broth to the flask and then proceeded to boil the infusion to kill any microorganisms present. Due to the shape of the flask, the broth was exposed to the air. It was shaped like a swan neck, so it was exposed to the air, but no dust could get into it or any particles. He also made sure that any dust, any particles would never make it into the mixture because they would essentially get trapped in the middle of the flask. The experiment concluded that no matter how long he left the flask, no bacteria or microorganisms started to develop in the mixture. However, when he put the flask at an angle to allow any physical particles to get inside, the bacteria and microorganisms would develop rapidly and multiply very quickly. The experiment's findings were so important to modern medicine because if the concept of spontaneous generation had remained a common belief in medicine, it would have made it incredibly difficult to stop the spread of disease, since it would have been the belief that disease could arise from non-living matter, so we wouldn't have known that physical particles cause disease. He also, like I said earlier, coined the idea of pasteurization. Now, Pasteur originally started researching this idea of fermentation in 1856 when he was tasked by a local wine manufacturer to figure out why his alcohol was going sour. He concluded that it was the growth of microorganisms which were responsible for ruining the wine, beer and the milk in France at the time. He knew that to kill any present bacteria, he had to bring it to a temperature where it could not multiply. So essentially, the bacteria had to denature and it couldn't multiply. In turn, he came up with a process in which the beverage would be heated to a high temperature, about 60 to 100 degrees, in order to kill the bacteria, turning the milk, wine, and beer sour. And because he knew that it was the particles turning the milk and wine sour, he was able to save industries in France tenfold with this term pasteurisation, which was coined after him. It was so important because it kind of led Pasteur to explore the idea that bacteria was present in the food and drinks we consume, and it kind of confirmed this idea that if we could stop microorganisms entering the body at any level, it would rapidly, stop infection. So, the food and drinks that we consume, if they're free of bacteria or microorganisms, we can stop disease at many levels. It also led a British surgeon called Joseph Lister, who was a renowned surgeon. He pioneered the use of antiseptics within operating theatres, which proved massively successful in stopping the amount of people dying during surgery. And this all stemmed from Pasteur's work, coming up with the idea that bacteria entering the body is what caused infection. He is perhaps best known for his work on vaccinations. His journey on this began in 1879, where he worked on stopping the spread of chicken cholera. He injected the chickens with an attenuated, less powerful version of cholera, and he figured out that they became completely resistant to the fully formed strain. And he used this to base the rest of his work on. Pasteur also developed a very effective vaccination against rabies. He began by purposely infecting rabbits and kind of treating the affected nerve tissue of the rabbits. The vaccine was first used on a human in 1885 on a 9-year-old Joseph Meister after the boy had been attacked by a dog infected with rabies. Pasteur could have been in a lot of legal trouble for this, considering he wasn't actually a licensed physician. But after 3 months of being given regular inoculations, he had about 13, he made a full recovery, and Pasteur was hailed as a hero, and any legal charges were dropped. So why is Louis Pasteur so important? He truly was a pioneer in the field of microbiology, immunology, and chemistry. He laid the foundations for modern science, as well as saving countless lives with his developments for public health, most of which were the development of the vaccines. We can link Pasteur's work heavily to the modern day climate. If it wasn't for Pasteur's huge contribution to the field of immunology, we wouldn't have the basis for creating inoculations and vaccinations now. He laid the groundwork for scientists now to discover that sort of thing. And it was said that Louis Pasteur was neither a physician nor a surgeon, but no one has done as much for medicine and surgery as he has. And, this is just one example, but he has had many, many public places, hospitals, streets named after him, and he truly was very influential. So, thank you very much.